I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mo Football. If you have already, be sure to follow and captivate interview with key figures in the world of sport. Coach Sims, thank you for sharing your experience, insight, and passion for soccer. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. To our listener, remember to stay tuned for more stories to take you inside the game we love. Until next time, it's your boy Musa Seka. I'm out. Peace. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me again, Musa, to another episode of Mo Football. Today, I have the pleasure to have Coach Eric Sims from Jesuit High School in Tampa, Florida. Today, we'll discussing his history with his high school and also learn a little bit more about the Tampa 10 Championship League and also what to expect about the St. Louis Champions League that will start in September of next year. And from there, we'll just talk soccer and hopefully get to know you a little bit better and definitely know a lot more about this. From what I understand, Jim told me that you are a two-sport um, athlete. So that's will be one of those very interesting stories that we like to hear. Well, all right. Yes. And so from what I've seen in your bio, so you Jesuit is your alma mater?
It is, yeah. I graduated in 1995.
95. All right. And from what I understand, you were also a goalkeeper and that you've won a Class 5 championship with skill. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I was a goalkeeper in high school, mostly, and then in my senior year in 1995, we won the state championship.
Okay, so starting championship wins very early on then, huh? Excellent. Yes, and then we understand that you went to University of Tampa as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that experience? And from my understand from Jim that you were so good that you had a split of scholarships,
I
soccer
did,
and
yeah.
baseball.
Yeah, so at Jesuit, I was a three-sport athlete. I played
Nice.
football, American football,
Okay.
in the fall, soccer in the winter, and baseball in the spring. And then, throughout the recruiting process, I spoke to quite a few schools, and none of them would commit to multi-sports. They would say, "Well, we'll see when you get here." So, University of Tampa was the one who said, "We want you for both, and we're going to invest in you in both." So, they kind of split the scholarship, which was good for them financially. And
Yes.
then, so it was soccer and baseball at the University of Tampa.
Oh, nice. And so having those two sports, could you tell us maybe a little bit more if one sport helped you with the other, or was it more of a, I guess, different
I mean,
skills?
I would say that they're completely different sports for sure.
Okay.
But I think in the positions that I played, in high school, I was a catcher,
Okay.
which obviously helped with the hand-eye coordination of being a goalkeeper. So I would say that they both helped each other a great deal in terms of the positions I played. I mean, obviously the sports are very different. Um, you know, baseball's a little bit slower, but a lot more moving parts in terms of where people are supposed to be and game planning and player tendencies and things like that. Whereas soccer's more of a free flowing game. So I got kind of the best of both worlds in doing both. And I and looking back, a lot of people ask me if I would have committed to one. I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have changed a thing because number one, I was always in season, so I
Yep.
never had to deal with the off season training and workout programs, which was great. But the experience of playing two sports was unbelievable and invaluable to me. And I think made me the person I am today for sure.
Excellent. Yes, and the reason why I was asking, because we do try to advocate even our kids and others that, not really to concentrate on one sport. Our kids, they do mostly swimming all year long, so they're always in shape. So when it's soccer season or baseball season, they're always in shape. So we always try to advocate multiple sports. So it's good to know, coaches knowing that coaches had also multiple sports, which definitely helps you, hand-eye coordination and definitely make a lot more friends and make it, um, remove the burnout that comes
Yeah.
with, our soccer lives when we
I think
get
I
involved.
think I think it's more difficult. It's more difficult for the kids nowadays because there's not really a start and end to the season.
Yes.
When we played when I was young, you knew when baseball season was, you knew when soccer season was, and now it's just, it's become such big business that they're stretching it over 10 to 12 months, and being in Florida, we can play all year long. So
Yes.
it's a lot more difficult for kids to multi-sport, but for the kids who can and have the want to do it, I think it makes them a much better athlete and gives them a different perspective, and it prepares them a lot better for the sport that they end up choosing, but also life in general, for sure. But it'd be very hypocritical for me to tell one of my players that you're only going to play soccer.
Yes.
So I can't do that. So I advocate for my kids to do as much as possible. And with my own kids, I would love to get my youngest son into gymnastics,
Oh, yes.
because I think it gives them such a great base athletically, to whatever sport that they end up choosing. And he's tried every sport there is. Now he's kind of um, going towards golf,
Okay.
which is great. And then he does play soccer as well. So
Yeah,
I
golf helps with business too. So,
yeah,
it's,
absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
Excellent. Perfect. Yes. So, the second part we'll do here is, just to get to know you a little bit better. So the first thing is, what got you into soccer? Was it, just hanging out with friends and trying the sport, or was it a sporting event that kind of,
Yeah,
got you into the sport?
I don't really have an answer for that because I started when I was so young.
Okay.
I don't know if my parents made me or if um, or if I said I wanted to play, but I remember playing soccer, at least I think 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I played it, and I always played soccer and baseball. And
Nice.
then an interesting thing happened when I was about 12, 13 years old. I actually decided that I didn't want to play soccer anymore,
Oh,
that I was just going to concentrate on baseball. And I kind of lost, um, no, kind of the desire to play soccer. Um, and I was a field player my whole life, and hadn't really been a goalkeeper. And then that year I took off. Um, at the end of that year, I said, you know what, I miss it. And so
nice.
when I got back into it, I found, a team and a coach that I was drawn towards, somebody that, cared about me and about me as a person. So I was drawn to it. And he was the first person who said, I think you'd be a decent goalkeeper. And
Nice.
so I got my first taste of goalkeeping that year, but I always did both. I always played in goal, and I was always a field player as well. So I think my strength as a goalkeeper, I was very good with my feet. I'm not very tall,
Okay.
but I was always good with my feet. And I think, playing in the field and giving me that base when I was young was so important.
Yes. So you were more comfortable with the ball at your feet.
Yeah,
So therefore, yeah.
100%. And I think my desire to play other sports. I played baseball and I played football growing up, and catching the ball was always easy for me.
Nice.
And I think that stuff kind of helped me transition pretty easily into being a goalkeeper.
Yeah,
for
we're
sure.
starting to see the trend of I guess baseball players, especially I guess now U.S. soccer, a goalkeeper. He was a baseball player
Yeah,
first, and then become a goalie. So it looks like kind of
hitting.
works out.
I
Baseball.
mean, I would say hitting a baseball and catching a baseball from a pitcher throwing that hard has got to be one of, if not the most difficult thing to do in sports.
Oh, you have to. I always tell people you have to be special to be a goalie. Maybe have a little bit not much fear
Maybe a
because
little
yeah,
crazy.
that I was leading to that a little bit, but yes. I was like, there's not many people that will jump in front of a ball with a foot going towards
Mhm.
you. It will. It takes a special person to do
It
it. So
does.
I always give all my credits to goalies because, um, it's just like firemen and fire police officers. Us forwards, we run away from the ball and the fire, and those goalies are like, oh, there's a building in fire. I'm going in there.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, I'm gonna put my,
yes,
throw my face towards this ball, and
yes.
as the player's running at me. Yeah, goalkeepers have to have a bit of a crazy to them for sure, I think.
It works. So, and I think the other question, so what would you say is like your favorite player growing up? Or was there a certain player that you were drawn to, no matter
Um,
the position?
yeah, I think growing up, I was always more of a baseball player who played soccer. And so watching soccer didn't come probably until a little bit later, but I think, as I got really serious about goalkeeping, especially my freshman year of high school, I was drawn to Peter Schmeichel.
Okay, from Manchester
Especially
United, right?
especially when he was at
Yes.
Man United. He was just fearless, fiery. Wasn't afraid to yell at his teammates, and was definitely a leader of his team for sure. And he was just somebody who was just unbelievable. I mean, the saves that he would make, and I think his personality though is something that differentiated him from the others. So I would have to say Peter Schmeichel is probably the guy that I like the most.
And he definitely calmed down. Now, if you see him on TV, he's a lot more calm
Yeah.
and posed compared to his
Now
goalie days.
he's a dad too. So
Yes,
with his son playing at that level has got to be a cool thing.
yes, certainly. So what would you say, if you could choose a superpower, what would it be and
Oh
why?
man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Superpower. I mean, I was always fast, so um, I mean, if you pick a superpower, I have to be able to fly, right? I mean,
Goalie,
I
flying,
I think
right?
I
Yes.
think I think flying would be the superpower,
Okay,
for
nice.
sure.
Uh, from a goalie, I will almost expect those. Um, and I think the last question, especially that you live in Florida, so would you say Messi or Ronaldo?
Oh man, that's the debate, right?
Yes.
You know, I don't think that I could put one above the other, but I just think that they're so completely different, with the power and athleticism of Ronaldo, and I think he's more of the new player,
Yes.
the player that, these days, the pros are more athletes than they are soccer players. And I think Messi is just the ultimate soccer player, just in terms of his technical ability, the way he floats in and out of open space and changes speed and direction. I think it's a huge compliment to both of them because it's kind of like the old school and the new school, but they were both at the same time,
Yes.
which is something that I don't think we'll ever see again. Two players that are at that level, at the same time, which is impressive. And I can't pick one over the other.
I that and that's I think for me it was always that too, that it was hard to compare him because
Hmm.
Messi was almost like, we'll call it the God-given talent
Hmm.
that he can just do whatever, and then Ronaldo was that the guy that outworked everybody,
Yeah,
and that led him to be to that position. So I've
100%.
anyone that asks me, I've never been able to put them on their own because
Yeah,
it's, one woke up and he was that good, the other one had to outwork everybody to
absolutely.
get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So those were some of the questions to get to know you a little bit, because we do know sometimes our when we have our coaches, you see the hat and
Yeah,
practice the whistle, and sometimes we don't really get to know a little bit more about what they like to do, and maybe it's a few styles
yeah,
sometimes.
100%.
Excellent. So now we'll talk about the fun part, the Tampa top 10. And I did speak with Jim just I think yesterday.
Hmm.
And he had nothing but praise for you, so that was already a very good thing, because I think we spoke. I think it was it on a Monday,
Hmm.
and literally 5 minutes later, it was like, "Oh, Eric is on. Oh, everybody's on to talk to you." So I was like, the excitement of
Yeah,
having the Champions League. You could see that he really, you know, that was his baby, and want to make sure that anyone that wants to help are in it.
yeah.
So it was definitely. So I think for the first question is how did your high school came about? If it's Jim or someone else that reached out, and what did you see in that you
Yeah,
know
so
Champions League?
I mean, Jim Hart is a legend in this area. I mean, just the success that he had at the high school level, and the teams that he had, and it's funny that I was a freshman when he was, his Clearwater Central Catholic teams, when he was kind of at the height of their success, and it was almost like they were like mythical creatures, like they were the villains. And you thought of him and all the championships and all that, and he was viewed as this villain, and we always played against. We had wars against Clearwater Central Catholic when I was a player, and I think throughout those interactions, I got to know him a little bit as a player coach, and I had the utmost respect for him as a coach, and just viewed him as just this, ultimate, this top tier coach, and after college, I got into coaching, and I had gotten to a leadership role at a club here, and his name kind of came up, and I was like, oh, we got to get this guy. I mean, he's a legend, right?
Yes.
So, and I got to know him with working with him for a long time. I worked with him at a club in Tampa, and for a long time, and we'd always have these lengthy conversations about soccer and about high school soccer specifically, and about how great it is and how important it is. And he started floating this idea of, this Champions League. And he would always say, I think he had the name of it pretty early.
Nice.
Um, but he, would say, how great would it be, if we could get the top teams in this area. And I think it was an idea that he had a long time ago. And then I think it caught fire a little bit here, when it started, of, will these schools get on board? Because a lot of these coaches are not, especially here and especially in soccer. I mean, to do extra work is just, it's difficult. I mean, you're already making, no money to coach, and, you're going to tell me I got to play another tournament and, add extra games, um, you know, get on Zoom calls and go, and volunteer
Yeah,
and do all this
yeah,
stuff.
and do all the draws in
You
this.
didn't know if there were enough people who would get behind that. And ultimately, the community and the coaches said, yeah, we need this. This is something that, will benefit our players. And, I think every coach, and, I think the state championship especially in Florida, is the ultimate goal,
Right.
and and winning a Champions League is a huge accomplishment. But I think winning the state title is the ultimate, right? And you have to, in trying to, how can you get a leg up on the competition? Well, it's to play better games. Well, how can you play better
Right.
games?
And it
And,
gets to
when
achieve.
when you have some success, you know, and there are restrictions here, especially with the public schools, of they won't allow them to add games. I coached at a public school here for 12 years, and they won't let you add extra games unless it's a
Right.
tournament. So this thing was kind of, you know, help those teams add games and add high level games, which, the more your players are in a high level environment, the better
You're
they're going
gonna
to
push them more.
react, when they're in it again in a playoffs type scenario. So, I mean, that for me was invaluable when he said, I have this idea. We're in, high level matches, you know, if you get, five more high level matches in a season, I mean, that's going to prepare us for the playoffs like nothing else can. Um, so I think that piece of it was probably the thing that drew us to it. And then, and adding in all the other stuff of, possibly playing at Al Lang Stadium where the Rowdies
Yep.
play was a huge one. Having a semifinal. Last year we played at a college. We played at St. Leo University. And to put our kids on a college campus,
That's a different
is a
different experience.
yeah, and you put them on a field that is 120 long by 80 yards wide. You understand what real soccer is, and
Yeah.
what the demands and the expectations are going to be at the next level because you're going to be playing on a field that big. Um, so I think for me, the idea of it, it was an easy decision for us to go, but the
All right.
idea of having a champion of this area is huge. And anytime you can get publicity for soccer is
Absolutely.
important because it's been a struggle. There's no more newspaper. There's no more of that. When I would cut out the clippings in the newspaper and keep a scrapbook. Well, there's not that anymore. Well, now it's social
Yeah.
media.
Yes.
And so we've had to get very creative and have to get into the social media realm of things of always posting and always being relevant and always giving our kids that exposure um, is important. And live streaming of games now is a thing, and our school has been um, very good with getting to the forefront of all that stuff, social media, live stream,
And have
and
you
all that stuff.
seen like sorry. So have you seen, I guess, any guess improvement on, I guess, your team when they're starting to play with, a higher level, maybe a little bit more exposure after that?
100%. I think
Okay.
the higher level matches have I've seen a and I think you can probably correlate it with the success that we've had over the past 5-6 years. And the Champions League has been around about 5-6 years, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
and we almost have never heard of it till
yeah,
now. So
and
yes.
and you know we've been in the state final four, I think, every year.
Okay.
So I mean, adding those high level games is just something that prepares kids for that environment. Of this lose and go home mentality. I think just the more that you're in a high level environment, the better prepared you're going to be when you're thrust into it in a playoff scenario. So I think you can look at the success that our program has
Yep.
a lot to do with the Champions League environment.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few titles in making it to finals. So it definitely showed. I believe that you guys just had a game recently against Mitchell.
Yeah.
that from I guess it was a 0-0, and that you guys will possibly see him again on January 13th, if I
Yeah.
believe. So what would you say is one of those, knowing that it was a 0-0 game, was there any takeaway from that game that guess you could share,
Yeah. I mean,
or
I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mitchell in that program.
yes,
Even my days at the public school, which is called Gaither.
yes,
Mitchell was always in our district, so we played them every year. And then when I came to Jesuit, I made sure that we scheduled them every year. And Oscar Ubelis is the coach over there, and he does a great job. He's been around probably as long as I have, and so we've gotten to know each other and have great respect for how he runs his program and does a great job. And we know, every time we play them, it's going to be a good game, regardless of, that year, if one of us is up or one of us is down. It's always a high level match. It's always a difficult match. And I think, in the game on Tuesday, we were both, neither of us had a loss. So, going
wow,
into the
nice.
game, we knew it was going to be a high level game. And you never know, you know, what teams return, what he's returning from the year before. We kind of have an idea. I mean, obviously we scout and, watch video and do all that stuff. But, until you see him in person, you don't know what they're bringing to the table. But, I was very happy with the way we performed. I thought, and especially for us, the last few games, high school soccer is not typically a pretty game. The fields are typically a little bit smaller, and it's basically men playing on a field. So
And kids are getting taller and taller and bigger
yeah,
these days. So yeah,
taller and stronger. Getting in the weight room for sure. But I mean, the field kind of is condensed a little bit. So
okay,
in a club soccer environment, you're probably 120 by 70.
okay,
Whereas our field at Jesuit is 120 by 64. So it's a little bit tighter. So you get these bigger kids, faster kids on this field. It's difficult to play, a good brand of soccer where you keep the ball. But, our team this year has shown the ability to keep the ball a little bit, with having that little bit of an athletic piece as well. So it's a good combination. But, they were a very good team, and it was a high level game. And we had, tactically, they threw some things at us. They kind of sat in a low block,
yep.
um,
From what
for a little
I've
bit of
read,
the
yes,
game. So it was something that we hadn't seen much. So I think anytime we're throwing those things, it's just preparation for the end of the year. And, I was impressed with them, and we could see them, potentially two more times. We run a tournament in January called the
okay.
Tampa Bay Invitational, and I think we could possibly see them there. And then, again in the Champions League, if both of us win, we could play. We could see each other at Al.
And yes, and we'll be talking to Oscar. Still trying to schedule those meetings too. So yes, and the plan is to meet with most of the teams in the Champions League, just to get to know a little bit more of that tournament. So for those teams in St. Louis that are preparing for September, guess of 24, do you have anything that you would like to share to them on, the style or anything that they should
Well,
expect from?
I think number one, they just have to embrace it. I
Okay,
think if they all embrace it, it's going to benefit every program in their area. It's going to make everybody better.
yeah,
And I think, anytime that, you talk about raising the level, it's high level matches, it's, publicity. I think for them to embrace it, number one. I think number two, it's going to challenge their players, in these high level environments. but it's also going to challenge them as coaches because, the level of coaching in high school has gotten so much better. I think, if you were to talk about 15 years ago, 15, 20 years ago when I first started, you could just make a couple of changes and outcoach the other guy. If you were a little bit, if your team wasn't as good, you can make a couple of these days the coaches are good. They're going to notice the changes. They're going to make changes against you. So I think it's going to challenge them as coaches as well because, you get humbled pretty quick. If you're not prepared and you're not ready to go, you could get exposed as a coach in this environment as well. So I think it's a great thing for everybody. The schools, the publicity, the high level matches, it's going to prepare you for, to hopefully win state championships. So, my advice to any coach would be just to embrace it and go all in.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you know much about St. Louis soccer, but it's we'll say it's crazy town when it comes to soccer.
Hmm.
Especially there's a lot of private schools also, and most of our St. Louis local teams win their own class championships.
Yeah.
So what was kind of exciting about this one is that a lot of their almost in we'll say a few miles from each other, there's some of the top high schools
Yeah.
that win their own classes.
Nice.
So we're looking at,
Now it's like
each
the
pool
champion
when,
of the champion, right?
yes,
Hmm.
and there's everyone's looking for those bragging rights.
Yeah.
And then there's all those club teams that are also sometimes have players there. So it's kind of added a lot more of that competition between, um, they're always looking for who's the best high school team in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So this
100%.
was almost like the perfect recipe.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
perfect
and I
almost,
think a
but
lot of times too, you look at rankings and things like that, and until you play each other on the field,
yeah,
you can't know, you
that's
know.
good. And we also have that Kansas City rivalry
Hmm.
too. So it's like I think even Jim was thinking maybe one of those the highways, the I-70 highway where it's like the best team from Kansas City and St. Louis. So I think that's one of those things he's looking into. But
Yeah.
um, and I think that's what kind of it had a lot of St. Louis people excited about it is that they're almost looking for that one bragging rights
Hmm.
because there are so many classes that they don't play each other. So you can really call yourself the best high school in St.
Yeah.
Louis if you don't win the Champions League.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so I think
it's
that's why
it's
Jim
it's
was
very
on there.
similar for us in Tampa and in Florida. Of you have these rivalries of, but they don't play each other. So you're
Yes.
in the Champions League. You can't hide from anybody. You know.
Yes. And I think all those were pretty much jump into it. It's like, yeah, they want that one title. Even if they won their state, then it's like we need that final confirmation that
Yeah.
says yes, we are.
Yeah. 100%.
Excellent. So, and I think on that part, did you see with the, I guess the social media part and kind of promoting the tournament, have you seen, I guess, a maybe a more recruiters or more eyeballs on those games that kind of help your your class of seniors to get, or even soft, to
Yeah.
get a little bit more exposure?
Yeah. I mean the exposure piece has increased greatly. Just as far as bringing more attention to these teams and these players, especially on social media and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Of the top 10 poll of consistently putting soccer at the forefront of what people see on their phones because that's everybody's just looking at their phones nowadays. So I think it's definitely helped with that. I think the recruiting piece is an interesting one because I think the high school player wasn't recruited for college in high school. I think the accolades and things like that, the players of the year, or something like that, I think would help. But realistically, the recruiting wasn't coming from high school soccer. But I've seen a big shift in that, and I think partly because of the more exposure, yeah. But I think we've put more resources into, okay, let's do the job of getting these kids into college and and showing that we have good players and stuff like that. You know, I think the what we touched on before of soccer in this area, especially in the public school, because I was in that for 12 years. Of those fields were 54 yards wide, and so the
That's small.
soccer was not good. But now what's happening is the public schools are going to turf. And when they're
Yep.
going to turf, they're actually widening the fields. And so it's actually helping the soccer. And so it's becoming more of a brand of what the college coaches want to see instead of, ball going out of bounds every 2 seconds, long throw ins, and just dumping the ball in the box. I think there's a lot of different factors that are coming together at the same time where our kids are getting more exposure and in turn are going to get more opportunities at the next level when you're talking about college recruitment.
Yeah, and that's what got me very interested on kind of helping that part too, because
Mm-hmm.
we do know we had our club soccer, so those that's usually where you get all the recruiters and it's word of mouth on who goes to the ID camps and others.
Yeah.
So it definitely and even myself knowing that I had even friends that played high school that were even better than myself
Mm-hmm.
and others, but did not have the exposure or the means to be able to go to an ID camp or be on the club team. So that's what kind of got me interested on working on that with Jim and others. So that was definitely one of those exposure that you know we're even though we're a big soccer town, you just don't have to go to our club
Yeah.
soccer teams to see who's there.
Yeah. Which makes this a very attractive thing for a lot of people because you don't have to pay anything to get into it. So I
Yes.
mean, the kids who can't afford it, kids aren't playing anything to play high school soccer, and so you have those kids who may fall through the cracks, maybe getting a look, or becoming a player of the year, or becoming the MVP of the Champions League, and all of a sudden, a college coach in the area takes a chance on them. So yeah, I mean, there's so many great things behind this, and so much great for the kids and the community that it's just an awesome thing for sure.
Perfect. So yes, and Jim is running it also. He's definitely behind the scene, behind everyone and every podcast. If there's a microphone or a camera, he's there.
Yeah, 100%.
Excellent. Yes. So for the last part on here, do you have any questions regarding, I guess, soccer in St. Louis or anything that you would like to know about me or
Yeah, so
anything?
I am ignorant when it comes to St. Louis soccer.
Okay.
So I I
So we'll
think
have to change
I
that.
think maybe for me, like like how big is the area? So like for us, the Tampa Bay area encompasses multiple counties. Um, so you know, there's there's a lot of soccer programs in this area. So I think maybe how is the Champions League going to get made up, and how is that decided?
So yes, I think they did the drawn last year,
Mhm.
and what they did is they picked all of the class champions, and then after that there was another pool that added additional teams that were not,
So
I guess,
what
that were not the class
so
champs.
what we call it is a district. So
Okay.
we do district champions. So they're the 12 district champions. So I don't know if maybe that's class for
Yeah,
you.
I think it was
Yeah.
class. Yes.
And so and then I think there are like four at large, which are based on the year before, which sounds pretty similar. But I mean, how many schools are we talking about in that area?
Um, so let me take a quick look on that count because there's way too many.
Yeah, I mean,
But
we've got to be in the 50s, I would think. I mean, more than that
yeah,
probably.
so it looks like for us, if the picture will come up. So we got 2, 4, so that's 4. So let's say 16 teams with 4 pools.
Yeah, no. But I'm
Uh,
saying like how many schools have the potential to get in?
oh,
So
so that's a
how
good
many schools are
question.
in that area is the question. So the 16 who get in, how many are not involved in it, who have the
That's a good
potential to get
question.
in? That's because it's such a big number here.
Mhm.
It's not really that far apart per se, so nobody's traveling more than an hour to get to a game. But it's
Oh yeah, and I
interesting.
think most of those teams here, they will be less than they're probably 30, 45 minutes tops.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
which is
and
important.
yes, in some of those schools that I'm looking at, we're talking 10, 15 minutes from
Hmm.
each other.
So if you had to say like who is the top school in that area right now from a
Uh,
soccer perspective.
so wow, that will be quite a lot of them. So we'll probably call them. So I think the biggest one that we have the winningest coach is from CBC.
Hmm.
Then I think we have the Smet, Fort Sumo. So yeah, so we have about 4 of those teams that you almost hear their name
Hmm.
in the final every year
Yeah,
for the semifinal. So what I can definitely do is maybe share with you also that the picture that we have with the pool
yeah,
for this year, and definitely try to see just compare it to what you guys have.
yeah.
Um, it will definitely be a nice comparison, especially
And
when speaking with other um, cities like Kansas City. It's
there's a good mix with us with private versus public. So there's
yes,
there's a good mix of, there are private schools, but then there are some public ones in there as well. So it's interesting.
yes. So yeah, I think
And it's
I'll share
interesting to
the picture.
see
Yes,
the different styles too, because, sometimes you'll have you know, a team who likes to keep the ball versus a very direct team.
yes,
And
and
so
I
that,
think if you can see my screen
yeah,
here,
yeah, I see it.
yes. So it is a good mixture of public and public schools
Yeah,
and private. So this is the Smet, I believe, on here, and then there's Lee Summit. Those are 2 private. So it looks like it's a mixture of private and yep.
yeah,
So it will be all private and public on each of the pools.
yeah. It sounds very similar.
Yes. So it
So
definitely brings it
do
gonna be
do we
very
think
competitive.
do we think that one day it could be Tampa versus St. Louis?
I think that's probably Jim's dream. Yes, and I think he's probably looking out west first with the whole
Yeah.
Kansas City. I don't know if you've heard a lot of those battles, even in the MLS part of things,
Hmm.
where the whole Kansas City and St. Louis was who is actually the capital of America in
Hmm.
soccer,
Mm.
and guess Kansas City sort of had that title on paper, but St. Louis has sort of the U.S. Cup history
Yeah.
of winning 12 and having all of those soccer players out of St. Louis.
Right.
So there's that battle of, who reigns supreme.
Yeah.
Um, and Columbus Crew, the goalie, Schultz, is from Kansas City.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, from St. Louis. And he went to Scott Gallagher and he went to St. Louis High School and university here. So there's always that battle of, how many players plays for the MLS, and so
So
there's always that battle.
what time of year is St. Louis high school soccer? Is it fall?
Yes, so it is fall. So
Yeah.
that's ended.
Yeah. So we're in the winter. So
Yes.
our games start in November, and then state championships are at the end of February.
Yeah, so it looks like there will be almost a different of a
Yeah.
few couple of
Might be
months.
difficult to match that up.
But people are crazy in soccer. And a lot of them you probably see also a lot of those kids do play um outdoor
Hmm.
soccer, so they're always moving. And one of the fun thing that was happening is I went to Kirkwood High School here while my daughter was swimming, and there was actually kids from Vianney that's also in the playoff, and I believe another group of kids that they organized their own soccer league.
Hmm.
So they were actually playing at the high school against each other in the middle of winter
Oh, wow.
just to stay in shape. So that's and actually we'll be meeting with they're call themselves co-commissioners.
Hmm.
So there will be another video very soon that they will talk about their actual league.
Okay.
And they at the end of the tournament they have actually a trophy
Yeah.
that they give to that self-built teams together.
Right. So
So that's how
do
competitive
you
it is.
coach one of the high schools?
No.
No.
So pretty much what I've been doing is a lot of the social media part.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of the I guess the independent for the soccer team here, St. Louis SC.
Okay.
So Jim, and since St. Louis is kind of it's a big city, but the soccer community is small enough.
Right.
Knowing that I played in France,
Okay.
so that's where I grew up and played club there too, and um just starting to kind of want to bring a little bit more soccer to the city and not just club
Yeah,
and the
for
universities.
sure.
So knowing that high school is still looking for some of that exposure, um, in addition to all of the USL team that we have here indoor. So it's just to kind of bring all of that um, to the forefront
Mm.
since um, everybody's in soccer crazy because St. Louis have their first
Yeah.
soccer
Yeah.
team in the MLS. So it's just to kind of bring the exposure a lot more than what it already is
Yeah.
now. And I just completed my D license just
Nice.
yesterday. So we'll see what happens from there. But it's just
I'm
the love
I'm
of the
telling
sport.
you, I don't envy you going through that process now because I didn't realize I complained about it, but when I was going through the licensing, it was 8 days, 8 days, and you were done.
Yes.
Now
So
you go through the
now,
national licensing and you're going
yes,
6 months to a year.
yes.
I'm
Can't.
I'm glad I got it over with long ago.
Oh yes,
So
you cannot move to the next level after 6 months.
yeah,
I think our in-person training last Saturday it was cold, rainy, so we were there for 2.5 hours.
yeah,
So yes, almost paying our dues. We'll
yeah,
call
yeah.
it.
It's much more. I think it's much more difficult. When I was going through it, it was 8 days, and we would have to play the entire time. So it was 8 days
Yep.
of being sore because I was done playing and being sore from
Gosh.
playing all day, and so I complained, about that. But now I'm like, oh, that was great. 8 days, I was done.
Yeah. Eight.
These guys are having to, video their sessions,
Yes.
submit work and stuff like that. It's
89
I
hours.
don't I don't envy you for going through that, but it's a great experience,
Yes.
and a lot of great networking. You'll meet a lot of great people
Yes.
going through that process.
Ex-
So um,
And so I think one of the last thing is there anything that you wanted to say about Jim and also it's one of those things about Jim and why it's so important to him if you know any of
yeah,
that.
I mean,
Um,
I think I think I think Dave Wilson is another one
yes.
who is a big person who works behind the scenes, and I don't think everybody understands how much work Dave does. And Dave is he's an athletic director at the high school where he coaches. So he's an
So
athletic
triple
director
duty. Yeah.
and a coach. I think he actually coaches two sports. I think he coaches maybe tennis, but
Wow. Ouch.
he's got plenty on his plate, and he does all this work, along with Jim. And Jim is just, like I said, I mean, he's one of the good guys in this business, for sure. And when you talk about a coach, um, who cares about kids, and I think a lot of times, and I went through this transition as a coach, and it's how can these teams and these players help me? Because I wanted to be a college coach. I said I wanted to
Okay.
coach in college, and
Fair
so
enough.
and so how can these teams? And I thought if I won, I would get to be a college coach. And then my focus shift created. I had one of the best teams I'd ever had, and we had lost in the playoffs. And I said, I'm never going to win a state championship. I just came to that. I was like, I'm never going to win it. I'm changing my focus. I'm going to start to get to know these kids as people. I'm going to care about them and kind of get involved in their lives of stuff outside of soccer. And the next year we won a state championship. So
Hey,
I said, if I would have shifted this years ago, maybe I would have won. Would have won a lot.
fingers
But I
and
feel like Jim, that is his focus. And even though he won so many games and so many championships, I think it was just more about the kids and their experience and learning life lessons and all that stuff, and all the time and effort he's putting in is just because he wants to see these kids be successful. And so, for him to do that and to volunteer so many hours to this is just so admirable. And I have nothing but great things to say about him and the job he's done. And now going national with this thing
yes.
is something that I would have never believed would be possible. And
He's making
and
it
and
happen.
he had it. I think he dreamt it. He dreamt it and did it. And it's amazing. It's amazing the stuff that he's done. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for him as a coach, but more importantly as a man, for the
Right.
person that he is.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say, I guess as a player, those are definitely the coaches that we remember, growing old, and once you, every time we see them, we don't even call them by their first name. It's always
Yeah,
coach. No matter how old you get,
there.
how old they get, it's always
I
coach. So
was
that's
I,
pretty much the feeling I got from Jim.
I was in the grocery store and I had my back and somebody said, "Hey, coach," and I was like, "There's nothing better than that." And it was a
Yes.
kid that had been long gone. And I think for me, the greatest honor is to be called a coach, and somebody who's gone long after still calls you a coach. That's pretty special.
Oh yes. Still call mine coach, even though it's
Yeah.
been 20 some years.
Even
But
though it'd be
yes,
so understandable to call him Jim or to call,
yes,
my coach Bob, it's always coach because
yes.
he's always going to be coach.
Well, looks like you're in the right path.
Yeah.
So definitely, yes. So awesome. So I definitely appreciate your time. I've definitely learned a lot more about you, and with all my research, knowing that I go on vacation on Sanibel Island and Fort Myers a lot. So now knowing that there is a legendary coach somewhere in Tampa just hiding, it I guess it add more to the myth
Yeah.
of it. And funny enough is I've met a player from Miami FC,
Yeah.
Benjamin Ophilus. So it looks like I might be spending some more time in that region. So I'll definitely uh,
Yeah.
try to catch
We,
you
um,
guys.
we let me know when you're in town and we'll set some stuff up for you to come visit. We have some teams for you. You can come coach and run some practices. There's plenty of soccer to go around in this area. So
Yes. Florida
I
is our happy
listen.
place.
I appreciate the exposure that you're given to soccer. It's much appreciated, especially high school soccer. So anybody who's doing that has got to be a good person. So
Uh,
anything I
just
can do,
addicted to
anything I
soccer.
can do to help for sure. Absolutely.
Excellent. Yes. So I definitely appreciate your time. Um, I'm still jealous of the good weather you guys have because it's cold
Watch
here.
out. You may not want to
Um,
go back when you come. when you come here.
Oh, trust me, it's you have to pry me every time we have to go home.
Yeah.
Yes. So definitely appreciate your time. So we'll make sure to also share any social media information you guys have. Hopefully, we'll be able to catch some of those live games. Our hope is that we can try to expose a little bit more of the games to the St. Louis folks so they can kind of get a feel of what it's like in preparation
Hmm.
for September. And we'll definitely talk a lot more in the future and see what maybe Tampa versus St. Louis champs that in the works. Who
That
knows?
sounds good. That sounds good to me. But I
Awesome. Thank
appreciate
you,
your time.
coach.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Take care.
Always a pleasure.
Bye bye.